Due to the fact that you are the sole human representative, your participation is very essential in order to foster understanding between different species. The fact that Professor Trexell's tentacles started to tremble made it very evident that he was growing more agitated with his kind. A crackling sound could be heard coming from the subspace communicator, which was Professor Blackwood's voice. Almost little effort was made to contain the combination of amusement and disbelief that was being expressed. By biting her lip, Zara was striving to keep her laughter in check. Right. You are aware of this, right? Tomorrow is the day when the Galactic Academy of Cultural Exchange will be having a day in which you will be permitted to bring your pet to school. It was difficult for Professor Zara to restrain her laughing, and while she did so, her voice shook due to the intensity of her laughter. When the conversation was coming to an end, Zara's laughing could be heard across the whole room. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said in the last minutes of the talk, and then left the room. "The only thing I can say is that my pet could be a little bit different from what you are expecting, but that is the only thing I can say." At the moment when Zara was taking a glance around her dorm room, she saw that tears were beginning to form in her eyes. At that moment, Zara let out a giggling sound when she heard a deep growl emanating from the container. She laughed maliciously as she turned to face the large reinforced container that was situated in the corner of the room. It was as if she were saying, "It seems that you will be heading to school tomorrow." We had a lovely morning. In the main atrium of the educational establishment, students of Trexell's Academy took great satisfaction in showcasing their pets, which may range from delicate lizards to dazzling floating spheres. These pets were displayed in the atrium. The fact that I am curious in the animals that our human students keep as pets is something that I must admit. Some of the things I've heard suggest that the species that live on Earth might be rather diverse. As the doors to the atrium slid open with a hiss, it was discovered that Zara Blackwood was there. It seemed as if the doors had been preset with a leash that was attached to something and was constructed out of high tensile steel cable. She had a difficult time keeping control of the situation. While Trexell, the professor, was observing the scenario, he looked around the room with a smug expression on his face. Through the use of the saxophone, Sea Headmaster Quicks puts up a very civilized performance of interspecies harmony. An analogy that may be drawn between Headmaster Q Eeks and a detecting crystal structure is appropriate. As soon as a fully grown Siberian tiger by the name of Ash appeared from its hiding place, the reaction was immediate. Students who were delighted fled into their shells, children who were fear erupted in fear, and 3 separate kinds of aliens passed out simultaneously. Ash, on the other hand, seemed to be entirely unconcerned as he licked his enormous paw in a relaxed manner. As commotion broke out all around him, the pitch of Miss Blackwood Drexel's voice had progressively risen by a significant number of octaves. What on earth was happening on? What a startling revelation. Zara asserted that she was not guilty and said, "This is my cat." Then, to everyone's astonishment and the dread of Trexell, the enormous feline started purring, a sound that reverberated throughout the atrium like a warp drive that was not running properly. The noise left Trexell in a state of utter horror. "If I recall well, Professor, you said that you would want to have a companion from Earth who is domesticated, right?" When compared to this, Ash embodied the exact definition of a sophisticated way of behaving. Zara gave a shrug and pointed to Trexell, a student who was standing over there. It seemed as if he was feverishly trying to stop what seemed to be a sentient black hole from eating the furniture that was located there. Zara had been watching with a combination of fascination and fear. Headmaster QXX, who had been watching with a mixture of interest and alarm, came up to Miss Blackwood and said, "While I admire your passion, surely you know the risk your pet offers to the other students." "Sir," Zara gasped. Zara had been watching with similar feelings. The fact that Ash was unsuccessful means that he will not, in the event that he is overcome with enthusiasm, inadvertently cause a singularity. Zara's willingness to comply with the creature's request for a belly massage caused the aliens to be taken aback, much to the surprise of the students who had gathered there. The acts that Zara took, in particular, took the students by surprise. The students were filled with amazement as they sought to run from the terrifying earth beast, and as they did so, they quickly retreated, their legs trembling as they did so. Immediately after Professor Threx-L had regained his composure, he cleared his throat, which was a technique of communication that was common among members of his species. "I am grateful to you, Miss Blackwood, for your assistance in this matter. The task makes it quite clear that this sort of creature does not belong in an educational setting. This is a highly apparent fact." Zara questioned if the problem was because to the fact that he was so large, or whether it was because he possessed sharp teeth and claws. Following that, she indicated a pupil who was situated on the other side of the room from where she was standing. Though it was difficult to recognize features, she recognized the beast as sentient and intelligence. His student seemed to be feeding live rats to what appeared to be a carnivorous plant that was around the size of a small threck snake. The plant appeared to be eating the rats. The student's face displayed an expression of annoyance, which was visible to everyone. However, VX Potter is a species that has a history of being successful in intellectual endeavors. This is something that they have accomplished in the past. Zara indicated with a nod that she was being sarcastic, and her tone revealed this. The children in the area shouted out and hurriedly grabbed their own pets, which they had neglected to take with them in their rush to run. Ash let out a massive yawn while revealing her rows of gleaming white teeth that it is. "Hey!" There were a few children in the nearby theater who yelled out. Almost immediately after that, Headmaster QX, who had been listening to the discourse with an increasing feeling of pleasure, finally made his voice known among the other participants. When Zara asked, "Perhaps, Miss Black, would you be able to throw any light on how you came to have such a one-of-a-kind pet?" Her eyes lit up with excitement. "Oh, that is so fascinating," she said. The tiger closed his eyes in contentment as it scratched Ash under the chin, and the purring of the tiger could be heard rattling the windows in the area. Ash was grateful for the scratch. In response, Headmaster Quick's saxophone started playing, and his crystalline structure started to shake slightly, maybe as a result of his excitement. During the time that I was still on this planet, I supported myself by going to work at a wildlife refuge. It's quite a story to tell. A rescue operation was carried out on Ashir when he was involved in a criminal trade in exotic pets. It was impossible to release him back into the wild, since he was so used to being in the company of humans that we were able to take care of him. As soon as I learned that I had been accepted to the institution, I was unable to face the thought of parting ways with him, or any other person. The aliens in the room murmured something that was somewhere between astonishment and terror, as Zara grinned in a playful fashion and stated, "It is not usual for lethal predators to be kept as pets on Earth. While not everyone has a tiger, huge cats, wolves, and bears are widespread." Zara's statement was followed by a mumble that revealed the alien's thoughts. Zara made a statement to Miss Blackwood in which she said, "Threx-L is not easily managed. This beast poses an unbearable risk to the other kids and their pets." Zara was referring to the hazardous monster. "Furthermore, what about the danger that your canines provide to me from their perspective?" In answer to her inquiry, the tendrils of Threx-L coiled in a way that suggested a state of confusion. Zara took on an authoritative tone. "But before we get into that, let's get the most crucial thing out of the way. Earth is a death globe because of its high gravity, toxic atmosphere, and the fact that the bulk of life on this planet would most likely perish even if it were subjected to these terrible conditions." After taking a little pause to assimilate the information, Zara continued to say, Now think of each and every pet that is here in this room. Zara then proceeded with the following statement. It is possible that ash originated on worlds that humans would regard to be paradisiacal, with low gravity, stable temperatures, and a lack of huge predators. In other words, these planets were delicate. For the sake of demonstrating her point, Zara reached out and gently prodded a neighboring location. The creature immediately ignited and shut down, and its owner let out a terrified shriek. Sarah did not say anything to apologize. It seems that even a light touch from a dying planet is too much for it. Imagine the anguish that would ensue if one of these animals bit me. I would be utterly heartbroken. After what seemed like an eternity, Headmaster QXX eventually broke the quiet and said, "Threxel, she does have a point. It's possible that we were too quick to pass judgment on Miss Blackwood because of her one-of-a-kind biological makeup. We've already had to make a lot of modifications. Due to the fact that all of the alien eyes and sensors were focused on Zara and Ash, the room became dead quiet. These critters would probably consider me to be a walking weapon, despite the fact that my immune system would probably consider their poison or bacterium to be a slight annoyance." With a sense of defeat, the tendrils of Buddy Threxel drooped. "I do believe that you are correct, Headmaster. Yet, it is inconceivable that we could let the beast freely walk about the school." To everyone's relief, Zara chuckled and reassured them that Professor Ash was acting in an entirely appropriate manner. Following that, she removed the leash from Ash's collar, which resulted in a collective gasp from the group of aliens that had gathered around. It came as a complete surprise to everyone when Zara gave the order for the tiger, who seemed to be an enormous house cat, to sit on his haunches. It was then that Zara instructed Asha to lie down when she was spread out on the campus. As Zara boldly walked away from Ash, Ash's steady attention followed her every move. Zara's movements were tracked by Ash's gaze. As his tail swished gleefully over the floor, Ash's torso remained still during the whole scene. As they stood there in startled silence, the students and teachers were confronted with a creature that by all accounts ought to be a frightening killing machine. However, it obeyed Zara's every order with such a kind demeanor that it embarrassed their own pets. Zara switched her attention back to Threxel and Headmaster QZX and said, "Ash is definitely as good as Ash. Behaved better than half of the other pets in this place, and I'm prepared to wager that he's also smarter." She used the example of a little spherical pet that landed directly on Ash's nose to demonstrate her point. A momentary expression of surprise appeared on the tiger's face before it gently pushed the creature aside with one of its enormous paws. The sphere moved over the floor in a manner that was completely innocuous, generating sounds that might have been interpreted as either terror or joy. A sly smile appeared on Zara's face as she said, "It seems like Ash has found a buddy." The owner of the sphere, a student with a gelatinous physique, approached with apprehension and cautiously went forward. "Are you quite certain that Ash won't consume it?" Zara mocked and said, "Of course not." While the other students cautiously approached, their pets in tow, Ash regarded them all with regal indifference, occasionally pausing to sniff at a particularly courageous creature that ventured too close. Headmaster QXX chimed in, saying, "I must say, Miss Blackwood, your Ash is proving to be quite the ambassador for Earth species." The tiger's eyes closed in bliss as the other students' curiosity grew. In the remaining hours of the Bring Your Pet to School day, Zara was surrounded by curious aliens who were eager to learn about the domesticated predators that exist on Earth, ranging from house cats to trained falcons. The aliens' responses ranged from disbelief to admiration, while Ash appeared to take pleasure in the attention, allowing the more courageous students to stroke his fur, while Zara kept a close eye on him. "I feel I owe you an apology. I may have misjudged the situation. Your Ash has proven to be a most enlightening addition to our event." Zara grinned and said, "No hard feelings, Professor. I know humans can be a bit intense by galactic standards, but that's why cultural exchange is so important, right? Professor Threx L approached Zara, his tentacles twisting in what she recognized as embarrassment. Miss Blackwood began to speak. Threx L.S. to curl in horror. Zara couldn't help but laugh as she patted Ash's massive head. She was already planning the event for the following year, and perhaps she could convince the sanctuary to let her borrow one of the grizzly bears. "Come on, Ash." After that, she clipped the leash back onto his collar and said, "Let's go home. I believe that you have caused the galaxy to be terrified. Just enough for a day." Ash yawned, showing off his impressive teeth one last time. Then he followed Zara to the exit. As they walked out, Zara could hear the excited chatter of students and faculty discussing the incredible creatures of Earth. They were comparing honey badgers to tigers, which Zara thought were impressive. As the doors of 3L Academy slid shut behind them, the atrium burst into a cacophony of excited chatter, terrified squeaks, and the occasional thud of Professor Trex L, whose tentacle was still trembling from the events of the day, said to Headmaster Q. Craxham, "I suppose that's one way to promote interspecies understanding." Q unpacked the blanket and made a large spread, then waved it to in full view of the castle. "Perhaps a day dedicated to bringing your non-lethal companion would be more appropriate." The two administrators laughed, and Chuke's resonance resonated harmonically, but neither of them paid attention to the small group of students. In the corner, students were frantically taking notes and whispering amongst themselves. "Had you seen those enormous claws and teeth? Just think of what they could do to a slug or battle slug. Would the human be willing to let us scan its DNA for academic purposes?" Word of Zara's pet quickly spread throughout the Galactic Academy like wildfire. Or, more accurately, like a particularly voracious space fungus. The exobiology department received an overwhelming amount of requests for information about Earth's fauna, while the psychology department struggled to understand how a species could coexist with such vicious predators and yet remain relatively unharmed. Zara was the subject of numerous inquiries from both students and teachers. She dealt with the situation in a patient and playful manner. Glee, a curious student, took a bite out of Zara's specially prepared meal that was safe for the death world. While she nodded, "So, are you saying that these dogs voluntarily live in human residential areas?" Zara saw a shift in the manner in which her other students interacted with her over the course of the days, despite the fact that it is difficult to shake off the title of Death Worlder. Although the dread was still there, she made an effort to get rid of it by shrugging her shoulders. Although the Goro's eyes widened in surprise, the question remains, why do they primarily act as companions? There are some who assist with activities like as hunting or guarding, but the majority of them are just there to look cute and be patted. On a certain day, it seemed as if Professor Trexell had finally come. He grabbed Zara aside after class with Miss Blackwood and started wriggling with what Zara recognized as eagerness. Zara was surprised by his behavior. When Zara found out that Professor Trexell had finally arrived, she was taken aback. He asked, "Could you possibly be interested in presenting a guest lecture on Earth's unique approach to animal companionship?" Zara responded with a smile on her face. "Sure. Professors." As a result of the announcement, the stock price of Trex L continued to fall. "I just wanted to let you know that it could take some time to deal with everything." The day of the presentation came, and the hall was packed with students hailing from each and every department and species. Several of them even used their numerous appendages to cling to the walls. During the time when Zara was standing at the stage and Ash was lounging about, the atmosphere was filled with tense excitement and anticipation. The professor, "I will make sure to book a full day for the lecture, and Ash would be thrilled to have another day off." The comment caused Sarah's grin to grow wider. There was complete silence in the room as she cleared her throat. In today's conversation, Zara would discuss the unique connection that exists between people and the other animals that live on our planet. At the beginning of the story, millions of years ago, there was a tribe of clever apes and the harsh environment that shaped them. Zara would weave a story during the next several hours that would have her audience gasping in fear and whispering in astonishment as she detailed how early people befriended wolves, how ancient Egyptians worshipped cats, and how horses were revered. Her audience would be gasping in horror and murmuring in awe. Paul Ash exemplified the remarkable link that exists between people and animals, from birds who brought down game from the skies to beasts that carried humans into combat while they were engaged in fighting. A broad variety of tricks, ranging from basic obedience to more complex movements, was shown by Ash, who gracefully responded to Zara's directions. As a result, the audience was left in a state of reverence. When I speak, sometimes the reference is spelled out carefully. Nevertheless, Zara clarified to Ash, while rubbing behind his ears, that it is not simply about control or dominance. Rather, it is about mutual respect and knowing the other person. She paused for a bit and looked out at the multitude of alien faces that were gathered around, before continuing. I know that many of you perceive Earth as a realm of death, and that humans are the frightening apex predators of that planet, she continued. In addition, you are not entirely wrong in your assessment. What you need to understand, however, is that we have companions, lovers, and friends at the very top of that food chain. This is something that you need to be aware of. Says, pointing to the tiger, this is the product of millions of years of coevolution. Ashir could kill me if he wanted to, but he doesn't because we understand each other, trust each other. The true power of Earth's fauna is, ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate gender. The lecture ends with thunderous applause and various species-specific expressions of approval as the auditorium gradually starts to empty out. Zara is surrounded by a crowd of enthusiastic students who are all asking, is it true that Zara is? As the audience gradually begins to empty out. Some human species keep poisonous snakes as pets. These snakes are known to be dangerous. The question was posed to me as to whether or not there are any animals that are indigenous to Earth that would be ideal for humans who do not reside in the realm of the dead to cultivate as pets. Following the release of a giggling sound, Zara made a gesture of surrender by raising her hands to her chest. It is possible that we will organize seminars in which we will learn about the many different kinds of animals that inhabit the planet, how to properly care for them, and maybe even how to form relationships with them virtually. The students enthusiastically accepted the concept, and they chattered passionately about it all during the class. Among themselves, Professor Threxell approached Zara, his tentacles practically tied in knots with excitement. Miss Blackwood, that was illuminating, doesn't even begin to cover it. I dare say you've sparked a revolution in our understanding of interspecies relationships. Zara smiled absent-mindedly, stroking Ash's fur. Happy to help, Professor Tell. I have to admit I'm a little worried about what will happen when they find out about some of our more extreme pets. Threxell's eyes stalk quivered curiously. Such as Zara's grinned. As soon as she began to describe the germ that was almost hard to eradicate, she had a rush of pride that made her feel really proud of herself. Her other students at the Galactic Academy displayed expressions of shock and horror, which showed that she had just as much to teach them about her homeworld as she had about the civilizations of other worlds. She had a lot to teach them about her home world. In the beginning, she had enrolled in the Galactic Academy in order to learn about other cultures. 6 months after the now famous Bring Your Pet to School Day, they were absolutely ignorant of the fact that the student had brought their pet to school. At the Galaxy Academy of Cultural Exchange, there has been a change in the conditions that surround the institution. At the same time as the capacity of the exobiology department had expanded by a factor of 3, a new wing had been constructed to focus only on issues that were related to Earth. There was now a Death Worlder menu in the cafeteria, which featured warnings about the potentially hazardous levels of caffeine that were included in some dishes. These warnings were placed on the menu. In the middle courtyard, there was a new memorial that had been erected as a way to pay honor to Zara Blackwood and Ash, who had been instrumental in pointing us in the correct route from the beginning. The ability to flourish, adapt, and develop ties that transcend species is something that life finds a way to do even in the harshest of circumstances. A mixture of delight and surprise could be seen on Zara's face as she stood in front of the monument. "Well, Ash," she murmured to the tiger that was resting next to her, "it looks like we really stirred things up around here." Ash yawned in return, displaying his formidable fangs. "It seems like we really shook things up." Sure, I know," he responded with a chuckle. As they were about to depart, a group of extraterrestrial students approached them and other students. "Just wait till they hear about the Honey Badger workshop next semester. That ought to really blow their minds," they said. "Be careful, Zara, since your senses are starting to become stimulated. The llamas that you mentioned were something that we were hoping you might expound on for us. Thank you for your generosity." At the Galactic Academy, there was never a dull moment, and with the enormous minutiae of Earth to draw from, you could be sure that things were only going to become more exciting from this point on. Don't forget to take into account the nation of Australia, shall we? In the event that you found the story to be enjoyable and would want to demonstrate your support, we would be grateful if you would consider giving it a like and subscribing to our channel. Additionally, I will include the number 88 into each and every comment that I make. Please accept my heartfelt gratitude for the labor and effort that you have put in.